Wealth, fame, power. Once upon a time, there was a man who had attained everything in this world. The Pirate King Gold Roger. You see, Chapter 1 of One Piece is special. Not only is it 54 pages long, but compared to other Chapter 1s of popular shonen manga at the time, the series starts off with an execution. Oda doesn't open with his protagonist. He opens with a death. One Piece opens at the execution of the King of the Pirates, who sets off a new era of piracy with his last words. Roger is already finished. The story being seated is not his. It belongs to whoever hears his voice and decides to go find what he left behind. The 14 words, "My treasure, if you want it, I left it all in that place. You can have it, find it," are the inciting event of the entire series. They are spoken on page 3. This means One Piece technically begins not with a hero's departure, but with a dead man's dare. The Great Pirate Age does not emerge gradually from a childhood dream. It erupts instantaneously in a single broadcast from a scaffold in Logtown. Roger weaponizes his own execution. This immediately establishes the moral logic of the world of One Piece. There is a Pirate King. He has been caught. The institution that caught him is powerful enough to do this openly, without fear of consequence. And none of that stopped him. He lived freely. He found everything. And now he's dying with a grin on his face and a challenge in his throat. The execution is framed not as a failure, but as the final chapter of a complete life. That's the first thing the arc tells you about what freedom costs and what it's worth. It also does something structural that is easy to underestimate. It establishes the endpoint before the starting line. Roger is the Pirate King. We now know what that title means, what it looks like, what it produces in a crowd. When Luffy says later that he wants to be the king of the pirates, we have already seen the ceiling. My first impressions here were that I felt the immediate momentum, the immediate world, and the immediate theme of this series. Before I even met a single character who will matter for more than a page, it asks a question: who will be next? And then introduces a 7-year-old boy trying to impress pirates at a seaside bar. 10 pages after Roger's execution, the tonal register shifts completely. We are in Foosha village, a small seaport, and the red hair pirates have made it their temporary base for almost a year. They are drinking in the party's bar, run by a young woman named Makino, and sitting among them, eating too much, talking too loud, getting laughed at by adult pirates who find him genuinely charming, is a 7-year-old boy named Monkey D. Luffy. Luffy's first act in the series is to stab himself in the face with a knife. Kinda stupid, I know, but he takes a knife and drives it under his eye, to prove to a ship full of pirates who did not ask for proof. He announces, before doing it, that he is not joking this time. Shanks tells him to go for it, and Luffy, being Luffy, does. Oda makes it clear to us that this person is someone who will hurt himself to make a point to no one in particular. After the bandaging, Luffy asks, again, probably not for the first time, to join Shanks' crew. Shanks refuses. Luffy is too young, and crucially, he cannot swim. This is true. It is also the setup for what happens next, because what Oda is doing in these opening scenes is constructing, piece by piece, the most complete portrait of a protagonist possible in the fewest possible moves. By the end of Chapter 1's bar scene, we know, Luffy will hurt himself to prove a point. Luffy wants to be a pirate. Luffy cannot swim. Luffy admires Shanks deeply, while also being genuinely irritated by him. And Luffy, when given a glass of juice instead of sake, will drink it happily and then be furious when he realizes the trick. Oda is showing you that Luffy is fully, completely 7 years old. Then comes the arrival of Higuma the bandit. He kicks in the door of the party's bar with 10 men behind him, announces that they want 10 barrels of sake, and when Makino explains there is none left, that the pirates have drunk everything, Shanks offers him the last bottle he was holding himself, by way of apology. Higuma smashes the bottle over Shanks. He dumps the sake on the floor, on Shanks, in front of the entire crew. Then he pulls out his wanted poster, 8 million berries, 56 people killed, and tells Shanks that mountain bandits and pirates do not get along, and that he should not push it. He cuts the table in half with his sword to punctuate the point. Then he leaves, satisfied that he has humiliated a coward, and Shanks' crew laughs. They laugh at their captain getting a bucket of sake poured on his head. Lucky Roo found it especially funny. Shanks himself tells Luffy, who is furious on his behalf, that there was no reason to get worked up over a bottle of alcohol. Luffy storms off in disgust. He is angry because he expected his hero to respond to being humiliated with violence, and his hero chose not to. The kid concludes that Shanks is a coward. He tells Makino later in the quiet bar that he overestimated Shanks, that he thought he was a tough pirate, and he is disappointed. What Oda is doing here is extraordinarily subtle for a first chapter of a shonen manga. He is showing you that the most powerful person in the room does not have to prove it. Shanks takes the humiliation from Higuma because a bucket of sake, or even the public humiliation attached to it, is genuinely not worth a fight. He is not afraid of Higuma. His crew is not afraid of Higuma. The contrast between the bandits' swagger and the pirates' complete comfort in themselves is visible in every panel. The bandits carry weapons and wanted posters as proof of their menace. The pirates just drink and dance and let the moment pass. This is the series' first and most important statement about the nature of real strength. It does not require constant expression. The people who need to prove their power, Higuma with his wanted poster, later Morgan with his statue, are the ones who have the least of it, in the sense that matters. True power, Oda is saying, is quiet until it isn't. And when it isn't quiet anymore, the change is not gradual, it is instant. Before the bandits leave after their first visit, something happens that Oda tucks into the chaos so naturally that it almost registers as a background detail. Luffy, sitting near Shanks during the confrontation, has been eating a strange fruit from a chest, confused, noting that it tastes badly. Then when he storms away from Shanks and stretches his arm in anger, Lucky Roo looks into the chest and goes pale. He shows Luffy a drawing of the fruit he was eating, the Gomu Gomu no Mi, a devil fruit, a treasure they took from an enemy ship. And Luffy ate it, because it was in front of him, because no one stopped him. Shanks calls him an idiot, and he is completely right. The most consequential physical transformation in the series happens through pure accident and appetite. He will never swim again. In a world where the ocean is everywhere, where sailing is the fundamental activity of everything Luffy wants to do, where the sea is not the background but the character of the series itself, because he did not ask about the contents of the box before eating from it. But the thing is, Luffy is not sad about the fact that he'll never swim again. We see this when Luffy visits the fish store in the village, stretching his cheeks into a grin, and tells the storekeeper that he became happier after eating the Gomu Gomu no Mi. An old man on a crane tells him a rubber body is useless. Luffy disagrees. The joy is completely genuine. He is not pretending to be fine with the loss of swimming. He has genuinely reframed what was objectively a disaster, permanent inability to swim in a world of oceans, after announcing his desire to be a pirate, as a source of happiness. This reframing, this incapacity to stay inside a negative interpretation of events, is Luffy's psychological immune system. Then we cut back again, to when the red-haired pirates were out at sea. Luffy is venting to Makino in the bar about his frustration with Shanks and his crew, still frustrated about how Shanks didn't stand up for himself in front of the bandits. Then all of a sudden, Higuma begins, when he walks back into the party's bar. He sits down, orders sake, and eventually says something that causes Luffy, who cannot fight Higuma, who cannot swim, who is 7 years old and alone in a bar with a gang of killers, to retaliate anyway. Makino runs through the village to find the mayor. By the time she returns with him, Higuma already has Luffy in a hostage situation with his sword raised to kill him. Then Shanks and his crew reappear. One of Higuma's men points a gun at Shanks. Then comes the legendary line, "Pulling out your pistol means putting your life on the line." He's calm and composed, while the bandit didn't understand what he was getting at. Shanks then tells him again, "I'm saying this is no tool to threaten others." Then Lucky Roo shoots him dead before the threat can be completed. Roo shoots the man who pointed a gun at the captain, and that is the end of that man's story. The tonal shift between the first Higuma encounter, laughing, warm, a bottle of sake waved away as not worth fighting over, and this one is instantaneous and absolute. But Shanks reinforces something critical here. You can spit and disrespect him all you want, but he'll never forgive someone who hurts a friend of his. Already here, it gives us the feel that the pirates are in a way the good guys in this series. Ben Beckman then steps forward and disarms the rest of the gang alone. The crew is peaceful until the thing they care about is threatened. There is no escalation, no dramatic build, no warning monologue before the switch flips. The warmth becomes lethality in a single panel. It is over before Higuma fully understands what is happening. This is also the scene that reveals the distinction Luffy earlier failed to grasp. Shanks was not a coward when he let Higuma pour sake on him. He was exercising judgment about what is and is not worth the cost of violence. A bottle of sake, not worth it. A friend's life, different category entirely, different scale. The series' first and most important moral lesson is here, in the transition between these two Higuma scenes. The measure of a person is not whether they will fight. It is what they decide is worth fighting for. Higuma escapes using a smoke bomb, taking Luffy with him. Out on the ocean, Higuma kicks Luffy into the water. Luffy cannot swim. He struggles. A Sea King surfaces. The Sea King eats Higuma, who has no defense, no power, no answer for what the ocean actually contains, and then turns toward Luffy. Shanks arrives, and he does what the scene requires of him. He places himself between Luffy and the Sea King. The Sea King retreats. It is frightened away by something in Shanks' presence. Not a technique explained or named in these pages. Just whatever it is, Shanks is at his full extension, and Shanks has lost his left arm. When the Sea King is gone and the moment has passed, Luffy begins crying. Not because he was nearly killed, but because he can see that Shanks has lost his arm saving him. And Shanks, holding Luffy with the arm he still has, smiles. He tells him it is fine, a cheap price, The mentor figure, the standard of strength the protagonist is measured against. He is missing an arm. He lost it because he cared more about a child than about the limb. But Shanks genuinely, at this moment, considers the arm a fair trade, not a sacrifice in the tragic sense, a transaction that he would make again without hesitation. The thing he was protecting is still alive. The cost was acceptable. That is how Shanks relates to the exchange, and the smile is evidence of his sincerity. This moment is also, in Romance Dawn, the most complete illustration of the series' central idea about leadership. Shanks is a captain. He spent the whole of Chapter 1 refusing to prove his strength when provoked, refusing to play the game of dominance and power performance, choosing to let Higuma's disrespect pass without response. And then, at the moment when a genuine choice is required, protect the friend, pay the price, he does it without hesitation and finds the cost acceptable. That is the model. That is what Oda is pointing at when he shows you a one-armed man smiling. This is what a captain looks like. Shanks and his crew prepare to leave Foosha village. At the docks, Luffy says goodbye, admits he is sad they are leaving, but tells them he is not going to beg them to take him, because he has decided he will become a pirate on his own, and gather a crew strong enough to surpass theirs. Shanks laughs, and tells him that there is no way he can become a pirate, that he does not want him on the crew anyway. Luffy's response is the first time we hear his dream stated with its full shape. He will become a pirate, gather the strongest crew, find the world's greatest treasure, and become the pirate king. He says it furiously, full of conviction, to a man who has just told him it is impossible. Shanks' response is not to argue. He takes his straw hat, his own straw hat, the one he has been wearing throughout Chapter 1, and places it on Luffy's head. "Bring it back to me someday," he says, "when you become a great pirate." Then he walks up the gangplank and sails away, and Luffy stands on the dock, holding the brim of the hat with both hands, because it is too big for his head, watching the ship disappear, crying. There is another layer to Shanks' final words here. It gave off the tone of a challenge. Bring it back when you've become a great pirate. He is not just giving Luffy a keepsake. He is setting a condition. He is saying, this hat represents a standard, and you do not get to return it until you meet that standard. The challenge is built into the gift, and Luffy, standing there crying on the dock, understands this, which is why he is crying, rather from sadness alone, but from the weight of what he has just accepted. Beckman, watching from the ship as it pulls away, comments that Luffy will become big. Shanks says he knows, because Luffy reminds him of himself when he was young. That line does significant work. It tells you that Shanks was once this, a child with a too big dream, crying on a dock, watching someone he admired sail away. The hat did not originate with Shanks either. It was placed on his head too, by someone before him. The hat is already in motion before Chapter 1 begins, already part of a chain of inheritance that the chapter gestures toward without explaining. Oda plants this without lingering on it, lets it sit in the background of the emotional resolution, and moves on. Now after this we cut to 10 years later. We see Luffy set sail, and start his journey at the end of Chapter 1 in a tiny boat. He then gets sucked into a whirlpool, and washes up on Alvida's pirate ship, where a boy named Kobe has been trapped as a cabin boy for 2 years, pressed into service after boarding the wrong ship by accident, and lacking the courage to leave. Alvida is the series' first villain, and Oda makes a deliberate choice to make her lightweight. She's not a serious threat to Luffy. She never was. Her function is not danger, it is contrast, and ideological positioning. Her defining characteristic is vanity performed as authority. She moves through her ship demanding that those around her confirm her beauty, who is the most beautiful woman in all the seas, and responding to any failure to provide the required affirmation with violence. She keeps Kobe around specifically because he is useful, better at navigation than her crew, and because his fear of her means she can treat him as property. She has constructed on her pirate ship a small tyranny based entirely on the performance of self-image. Luffy hears Kobe's dream and immediately commits to helping Kobe pursue it, regardless of personal cost, regardless of whether it makes strategic sense, regardless of the fact that Kobe's dream and Luffy's dream are, institutionally speaking, in direct opposition to each other. Luffy wants to be Pirate King. Kobe wants to be a Marine. In most stories, this would set them on a collision course. Luffy's response is not to notice this tension. He sees Kobe, who has a dream and is afraid of it, and that is sufficient. The dream is valid. The fear needs addressing. This is Oda's first statement of what turns out to be one of the series' most recurring arguments. Luffy does not see institutions. He does not see Marine versus Pirate, does not see the categories the world has built around legitimate and illegitimate ambition. He sees people. He sees what they want and whether they have the courage to want it. Kobe's desire to be a Marine does not register to Luffy as ideologically problematic. It registers as a dream that a friend is afraid to pursue. That is enough. Kobe's arc in these 2 chapters is also, in miniature, the template Oda will use for every Straw Hat crew member who follows. Someone who has a dream, is afraid of it, Luffy arrives and makes the dream feel possible. Then the person finds the courage to act. Captain Morgan of the Shellstown Marine Base is the arc's second and final villain, and he is everything that Alvida is. Power as performance, authority as self-monument, but with the additional menace of institutional legitimacy. Alvida is a pirate. She has no claim to lawful authority. Morgan is the law. He holds the title of captain. He has the rank, the uniform, the base, and the power to enforce his orders with the full machinery of the Marines. And he uses all of it to extract offerings from an impoverished town, to build a giant statue of himself in the base courtyard, and to order the execution of anyone who disrespects him, including a little girl who brought rice balls to a prisoner. Morgan is the arc's ideological counterweight to everything Shanks represented in Chapter 1. Where Shanks did not need to prove his power and never built a monument to himself, Morgan has literally commissioned a monument. A giant stone statue, raised on the roof of the base, carved in his own image. The man who needs to be remembered in stone because his actual presence does not command genuine respect. His authority is performed at maximum volume because it is hollow at its core. He is the law because he holds the title. And he behaves as if the title makes his orders moral, as if rank and justice are the same thing. They are not. The arc's two villains, Alvida the pirate, Morgan the marine, are on opposite sides of the law and identical in their corruption. Oda establishes in his very first arc that the law and criminal binary is meaningless as a moral framework. What matters is not which side you are on. What matters is what you do with power. Roronoa Zoro is introduced to us in 7 pages of backstory, and one scene of a man who has been tied to a post for 9 days, having agreed to this condition as part of a deal with Helmeppo, Morgan's son, who promised to release a girl named Rika in exchange for Zoro's submission. Helmeppo broke the deal. He told Zoro to his face, mocking him, that he was going to have him executed anyway, and Zoro is still at the post. The implication is clear that Zoro, even weakened by 9 days without food, could escape. He is staying because he made a commitment, and the commitment means something to him regardless of whether the other party has honored theirs. He made a deal. The deal stands. His word is not contingent on the other person's word. It is his word. It holds because he holds it, and we get Zoro's entire character delivered in his first scene. He is a man for whom a promise is absolute, not instrumentally, not conditionally, but in itself. The promise is the unit of moral currency he trades in, and he will not devalue it even when devaluing it would save his life. The scene is also quietly the most emotionally complete character introduction in the arc. We understand Zoro's values, before we understand his abilities, before we hear him say a single ambitious thing about his dreams. We understand what kind of person he is from what he is doing right now, which is accepting death rather than break a commitment to a world that has already broken its commitment to him. Oda then gives us Zoro's backstory. A young Zoro at a dojo, losing for the 2001st time to Kuena, the master's daughter, and then challenging her to a duel with real katana, losing again, and watching Kuena cry afterward. She cries because she believes that as she grows older, the physical gap between a girl and a boy will widen, and she will fall behind. She says she wishes she had been born a boy, and Zoro, having just lost to her, gets angry, furiously. He tells her she has no right to complain about gender when she just beat him. He tells her it is an insult to his hard work. And then they make a promise. One of them will become the greatest swordsman in the world. Kuena dies the next morning. She falls down the stairs, and Zoro, standing over her body, calls her a coward for leaving. Then he asks the master for her sword. He will carry it. He will become the greatest swordsman in the world on her behalf as well as his own. The promise to Kuena is the first promise in Zoro's chain of promises, and it is the one that makes all the others make sense. Zoro keeps promises the way he does because the first great promise of his life was one he could only keep alone. The other person died before the competition could resolve. He carries Kuena's sword and Kuena's ambition because the promise was real and she is gone, and the only way to honor it is to see it through himself. Every subsequent Zoro moment in these 7 chapters and beyond is the same scene at higher stakes. A commitment made, a cost paid, the commitment kept anyway. The detail here that finally commits Luffy to recruiting Zoro is not the swordsman's fearsome reputation, not the fact that he could be powerful and useful. It is rice balls. Rika, a young girl from the town, climbs over the base wall to bring Zoro food because he has been without it for 9 days. She made onigiri. She made them with sugar instead of salt. Helmeppo arrives, eats one, spits it out, then throws the rest to the ground and stamps on them. He tells Rika it is illegal to aid a prisoner, and that she is only being let off because she is a child. Then he has a marine throw her over the wall. After Helmeppo is gone, Zoro asks Luffy to give him the ruined rice balls. He eats them, in whatever state they are in, stamped on, mixed with dirt, and asks Luffy to tell Rika they were good. He ate them so that her kindness would not be wasted. He ate them so that a girl who tried to do something kind for a stranger would know the kindness was received. Luffy takes this information back to Rika and delivers the message, and that is when he decides, not from strategic calculation, but from recognition of character. A man who has been without food for 9 days, facing execution, was given ruined rice balls by a child he doesn't know, and chose to eat them so she wouldn't feel that her effort was wasted. That person, Luffy decides, is someone worth recruiting. This is Luffy's recruitment logic in its first complete expression. He does not evaluate Zoro's power, does not assess his usefulness, does not weigh the strategic cost of adding a wanted man to his crew. He sees who Zoro is, through a small act, through what a person does when no one powerful is watching, and decides that is enough. The climax of the arc is Luffy and Zoro defeating Morgan and his Marines. The fight is not complex. What matters is the thematic clarity. Luffy, trying to find Zoro's swords in the base, accidentally destroys Morgan's statue. Not even through combat, but through the momentum of launching himself onto the roof too fast and grabbing the ropes while flying past. The statue falls. Morgan's response is instantaneous. Luffy must die, because the statue, the stone monument to Morgan's authority, has been broken. The monument being the locus of Morgan's legitimacy tells you everything you need to know about that legitimacy. It was never real. It was always stone. Luffy then makes himself the Marine's enemy explicitly and openly during the fight, on principle. He does not want to dismantle the Marines. He does not have an ideological manifesto. He just acts as if Morgan's authority does not apply to him. Because to Luffy, it doesn't. Morgan's title is meaningless. What matters is what Zoro is doing in that square, and whether it is right. The title of captain does not make the orders moral. The rank does not make the execution just. Luffy proceeds on this basis without argument, without debate, and the arc's ideological point is made through action rather than declaration. Morgan is defeated by Zoro. The Marines who were forced to serve him celebrate his fall. The town is freed. And then Oda does something that the arc's thematic argument requires. When the Marines come to settle accounts with Luffy and Zoro, they acknowledge what happened, acknowledge that the two of them helped, and then tell them to leave. They cannot report what actually happened to Marine headquarters. They will look the other way. They are decent people who have been under an indecent authority, and they know the difference. They just lack the power to act on it, until Luffy and Zoro provided that power from outside the institution. This is Oda's final word on law and justice distinction in this arc. The Marines in Shellstown are not bad people. The institution they serve produced Morgan. The institution will continue to produce Morgans. The institution is not the same thing as the justice it claims to represent. Then we cut to the departure and the promise. Kobe stands alone on the street as Luffy and Zoro prepare to leave. The Marines ask if he is with the pirates. Luffy, betraying Kobe's cover without hesitation, cheerfully narrating his entire history with Alvida, makes Kobe's situation suddenly very complicated. Kobe hits Luffy. Luffy tries to hit him back. The Marines stop it. And in the chaos of this, Kobe finds the moment and uses it. He stands up, declares that he wants to join the Marines, even just to do chores, even just to start. And a Marine officer, seeing the earnestness and acknowledging the complexity of his past, says yes. Luffy's apparent betrayal of Kobe is of course the opposite. He forced the moment. He manufactured the confrontation that gave Kobe a visible separation from the pirates and a visible declaration of his own conviction in front of the Marines who needed to see both things. Whether Luffy calculated this or just blundered into it being helpful is deliberately ambiguous, and the ambiguity is part of the point. With Luffy, the outcome and the method are frequently indistinguishable in this way. He does the right thing through mechanisms that look like incompetence from the outside. As Luffy and Zoro sail away from Shellstown, Kobe salutes. The Marines, to their own apparent surprise, salute as well. The officer in charge turns to Kobe and says, "You have a good friend in Luffy," then declares they are going a week without food for breaking the Marine code of conduct. The Marines salute pirates and immediately punish themselves for doing it. It is the arc's final joke and its final thematic statement simultaneously. Even inside the institution, even among people bound by rules, there is a recognition of what just happened that exceeds the rule's capacity to frame it. So all in all, Romance Dawn is technically a marvel. It does not feel like a marvel when you read it. It feels fast and warm and funny, and the emotional moments land without the machinery being visible. But the structural work is extraordinary. Chapter 1 is 53 pages and it earns every one of them. Oda understands that emotional moments need space, and plot mechanics can be compressed. The execution of the Pirate King gets room to breathe. The bar scenes have warmth and rhythm. Shanks losing his arm gets a single devastating panel. Not a spread, one panel. And it is more powerful for the narrative itself. Luffy on the dock, crying, holding the brim of a too big hat, gets a full scene. The villains are deliberately unchallenging to Luffy. Alvida goes down in one punch. Morgan requires more effort, but Luffy is never in genuine danger of losing. The question is never whether Luffy will win. The question is always, what does winning this particular fight mean? What does the victory reveal? Every combat in this arc is a philosophical demonstration before it is a fight. Oda uses his first arc to introduce a question. 7 chapters, 3 villains, 1 crew member, 1 dream stated plainly on page 3. And the question, posed by Roger's execution, by Shanks' arm, by Zoro at the post, by Kobe's hidden dream, by Luffy eating a devil fruit from a box without asking, is this: what do you do if you have a dream that the world says you should not have? And Romance Dawn gave a life-changing demonstration of that thesis. This arc truly gave us a phenomenal framework of what's to come. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this video, and if you guys would like to see more arc breakdowns in the future. And please do comment your thoughts of Romance Dawn under this video.